Hello, denizens of the internet. I probably should stop recording things really late at night when my partner is asleep, but today it's not without good reason. See, today I'm going to show you how to sew a bowl cozy for a friend or a family member or a loved one for this winter season. For this project, you're going to need 2 layers of quilting cotton fabric, and I opted for a fun dino print because who doesn't love dinosaurs? You're also going to want some sort of middle layer. I'll be using cotton batting used for quilts typically. You will also want cotton sewing thread to avoid any plastic materials from melting from the heat. Then you will also want a bowl, and you can use either the draping method, which is by pinching the 4 corners in and pinching around the bowl as needed, which is a little bit more fiddly, but I found a pretty decent formula that works for Corelle bowls, or at least for the bowls that I have, which is the square size of 9 inches by 9 inches. On each corner, you'll want to measure 4.5 inches from the corners of the square to the center of the square of fabric, and make sure that the dart legs from the center at your seam allowance line is 1 inch wide. Your overall seam allowance for the rest of the project will be ½ inch. If you do not have a sewing machine, I will be showcasing this 100% sewn by hand, since based on the polls in my community tab, you all wanted to see me do some hand sewing, so ask and you shall receive. Now for a dress form that I was padding out, I have a bunch of pieces of quilting batting that's mostly cotton, but each piece is too small. What you can do is butt the cut edges up against each other and sew it using a whip stitch so that the cut edges meet. The smaller the whip stitches are, the better. I'm just making this quickly, so I might be going a little wider and longer than recommended. You will want to make this batting layer squared up to be about 8 inches by 8 inches, as it will sit inside the cozy and get trapped between the layers. You will want to copy your darts on the corners of the quilting cotton fabric onto the batting. You'll essentially be making 3 pieces of fabric that are the same shape and sort of sandwiching them all together. This is actually kind of like how quilts are made in general. On the batting layer for the sandwich prep, you'll want to butt the edges of the darts and whip them into place. When sewing by hand, it's easier to mark out your sewing line so you can see what you're stitching a little easier. I'm also using Frixion markers so that the lines will fade, but they'll also be on the inside so it won't be that big of a deal. Next, you'll want to make those darts, so sewing the seams using a backstitch as small as you can. Mine were about 14 stitches per inch, but in many cases the ideal average is between 8 to 12 stitches per inch for quilting. For structural items like this that will need to hold some weight, you will probably want to do more stitches per inch. Once you have all of your darts made, you'll want to trim the excess, and if you don't have an iron to press your seams, a bit like what I'm showcasing here, is you can finger press those darts open so they lay a little bit more flat. Some sort of pressing is often better than no pressing at all. Ideally, before we get into finishing, you'll want to quilt the layers together by using some fun stitches. You can use shishiko or other running stitches in fun shapes to stitch the layers together so they don't move. When you finish your stitches, you'll want to hide your knots inside the fabric layers as best as you can. Now, don't do what I did and make your quilting last. It can be done, but it's very finicky for beginners. So what we'll be doing here is sandwiching. So you'll have your bottom layer, then you put the middle batting layer in, and then you put the layer that hugs the bowl together, square it all up so that it's in the shape of a bowl with as few lumps and bumps as possible. Leave yourself some space at the top of the cozy to tuck all those raw seams in for the final stitching. Next, we'll get out some ribbon. This is an optional method. but this is something that I thought would be a little bit of a fun addition. I'm using some Petersham grosgrain ribbon here for my thumb straps, just to make it a little easier to carry the bowl from one place to the next. For yours at home, I would recommend a cotton twill tape or a type of ribbon that's really sturdy that won't melt that easily if it does happen to accidentally get dunked in your soup. The ribbon that I'm using is fairly wide, which is about 1 inch wide. Turn the seam allowance of 1/2 inch to the inside of the cozy and take a minute to pin those ribbons by making a loop that will be as big as your thumb with a little bit of space to sew it down. You don't want those ribbons super tight, it should be just big enough for the straps for your thumbs. And pin those into place on opposite corners of your cozy. Now, I will admit I did a bit of an opposite method here where you should sew the ribbon into the fabric on the seam allowance first, and then sew the rest of the fabric down all of the way around using a blind stitch, or also known as ladder stitch. To review hand stitches, you might want to check out my frog making video, and I'll link that in the description box below and add it in the cards at the end of this video. So tuck in all the raw edges, sew everything down so it's secure, especially those thumb straps, and you can do some additional decorative top stitching to really secure the straps, or maybe even do some additional stitching along those side darts to secure those as well. And just be sure to hide those knots if you choose to do any additional top stitching method. And our bowl cozy is done! Thank you so much for joining me on this sewing adventure. If you like what you see, please tap that like button, make a comment if you made one, or if you want to make a comment in general, share this with a fellow crafter, as it all helps the algorithm. Until next time, I hope you all have a safe, happy, healthy, and love-filled crafty holiday or winter season. Bye for now.